Welcome back, everybody, to Unconditional Surrender in Europe, game designed by Salvatore Vasta, published by GMT Games. We are getting ready. This is the East First campaign series, and this is the next episode, episode 20 maybe, I'm not sure. We are getting ready to go into May of 1942. We had already rolled the weather. That's why we decided to stop, because it was going to be fair in the mild zone and fair in the warm. Poor still in the cold zone. And, of course, the mild zone is France. So the German attack is coming. And we'll just go ahead and get started here. We had already rolled the weather. No one declared war. We're going to the economy phase. This is fairly straightforward. I've had fairly decent luck here on the strategic warfare front, so he is down to only 11 active factories, so he's at 22. Production points. The British are at 24, and the French are at 16. And expecting a huge offensive, I gave one from the Brits and one from the U.S. And the U.S. gave one to the Belgians, too. And the Russians are at 17, and they just hung on to their points this turn. Strategic warfare phase. We're still at +2 for me and +0 for him, for the Axis. +2 for the Allies. And he rolled a 4. I rolled a 1, +2 is a 3, so he gained back one of his factories, which, will make it that many more points he'll have next turn. Strategic movement, if I remember right, it's going to be way over here in the east somewhere. Yes, he took the guy that was in east of Kiev and moved him up to the across the Duna and up here by the swamps to slow down my advance. Going to the west, I took my strategic move marker off the Western events card, and then I placed it down here on the French unit in Syria. I don't see any. I've already conquered Iraq, so there's no serious reason here, and I didn't have another good use for the strategic move marker, so I went ahead and moved him into Alexandria. And then the Soviets do their grand strategic move of 1 space to move the airplane from Smolensk to the front line. And then we go into Axis operations. So we're going to go back over here to the French front. I was surprised by this. I really expected to see the surprise attack marker come out, and maybe even the paratrooper and, all sorts of things like that. But he moved this infantry forward. And then attacked the 3rd Guards. So he has 1 attack with that infantry unit. We went into combat commitment, which, to me was a no-brainer here. He did not commit, so that surprised me again. So I went ahead and used up one of the French airplanes. Since he didn't airstrike me, I figured I might as well use him while I have him. So I went up to a grand total of 4, and he was a 0. He rolled a 4. I rolled a 1 + 4, which was a 5, so, I held. And then he activated this Panzer. So, I think we set his movement points back up. So he started off as 4, and then -1 because he's going after a city. Yeah, we'll go combat commitment. And this time I used the same airplane, and he used his first lift. So we're setting the, he's -2 and I'm like -5, so I'm getting a 1 no matter what I roll. He rolled a 3. Should have realized at this point that I couldn't hurt him and he couldn't do more than 1 to me. So this was kind of a wasted set of die rolls. So we both got in. So now we reset it. He's +2 for German, +2 for armor, +2 for air, -1 for the city. And I was +1 for French, +1 because he's elite, +2 for the airplane, and I stopped right there. I probably should have thrown a tank here to get an AS on him, but I didn't think about it. Saving the tanks, assuming he was going to get a breakthrough, I wanted to save the tanks for Lille or someplace like that. And then we set his movement points here. So we had that set right. And then he rolled a 4 + 5 is a 9. And I rolled a 6 + 4 is a 10. So stop that attack. So he came after me again. Reset ourselves to where we start. And we'll go back to combat commitment. Again, it's kind of obvious. So this time he committed... Oh, when he was committing his airplane, he was committing the first lift, and he's at -3, so if he rolls a 6, he'll actually do 2 sorties on me, which he did do. He rolled a 6 there. No matter what I roll, he would do 2 sorties to me if he rolled a 6. Because I was -4. I guess I could have rolled a 6 myself. So he goes up to a 5. I go up to a 4 again. And he rolled a 9 again, 4 + 5. And I rolled a 3 + 4, which was a 7, which was just enough to have him stand his ground at Sedan. So, and then he attacked again. And I think we're in combat commitment again. And I said, I've got to try and, stand my ground as best I can. It's his last attack with that armored unit. So I threw out a tanks marker. Went up to 4. He went up to 5. He used a airplane somewhere. Third lift. He rolled a 3 + 5, which was an 8. And I rolled a 4. +4 was an 8 as well. So that goes on the turn track, and I held my ground. So his next attack was the 1st Panzer, and he attacked into the 1st Guards. It's in Brussels. So I'm at a 2. He starts off at a 3. Combat commitment again. And I chose not to commit this time. Again, I only have 1 tanks marker, and I want to save it for Lille in case it matters. And he used his airplane up. So he went up to 5, +5 to +2. He rolled an 11. You can't get much worse for me than that. And a 5 + 2 is a 7, which was a retreat. And he took the hex, and then we had to take a quick pause here. He goes up by 2 willpower, gets a pro marker into the cup. He still had 7 movement points left, and then there we go. Put his pro marker in the cup, and then we went over to... I used to have a pro marker over here in Finland from earlier nonsense. And so he said, let's get rid of that. Since he conquered a minor, finally. And So he was at +4 if he wanted to go after me, and he decided that he wanted to go after Lil. So I was like, okay, +3 to +2. Going to combat commitment. And he has 4 movement points left, and he committed. Now this is where I thought instead of attacking Lil, I would have tried to attack Sedan to try and force the breakthrough. Because then the 2nd Panzer can activate and move into Brussels. If he can make me retreat at Sedan, he'd have an armored unit sitting in Sedan. He could move the 2nd Panzer in, attack twice into Lille. Same number of attacks he's going to get from coming out of Brussels. But, you know, if he gets a retreat at Lille and holds Sedan, then the 1st Guards has basically got to withdraw, or it's going to end up getting itself surrounded. And he kind of gets all the way to the Somme-Marne line without too much of a fight. But he went after Lille. So I played the last French tanks army. I threw it down by Vichy. And he used an airplane. So he went up to 5, and I went up to 4. He rolled a 5 plus 5 is a 10. Rolled a 6 plus 4, which was a 10. So I held my ground again. You should actually have 2 movement points left here. So now I don't have anything left to play. So he's at +5 to +2. It's 5 plus 1 is a 6, and he was like, oh, God. And I rolled a 2 plus 2, which was a 4, which forced me to retreat. I thought about this, and I said, you know, I think that's the best place to retreat because if he moves there, we were talking about this, if he moves there, he's technically still in supply, but he has no way of putting anything in Brussels. So I could, you know, make suicide attacks here on the 1st Panzer, just trying to get it to flip, and then, you know, because retreats hurt him. And I showed him my zones of control that would keep him from moving anybody into Brussels. And he said, you know, I really don't think I want to be in Lille. So he moved this Panzer over here and starts to take on the BEF. So we started at +3 to +1. Go to combat commitment. We both committed. And then he threw in his airplane. I threw in an airplane that I had sitting back in France. And I was going to throw my tanks marker, but we set up the air combat. I just forgot that I was playing my tanks marker as well. And he went ahead and rolled. And I said, wait, I'm not done. I have to play another event. And I told him he had to roll again because I should not have known what the air combat was going to be before we rolled. So he got to roll again. He rolled a 4 minus 2, so it ended up basically being the same thing. We each took 1. Actually, it was a 3, and he was a 2. Yeah, so we each took 1. And then we go and add up the combat. He's +2 for German, +2 for armor, +2 for an airplane, -1 for the city. And I was +1 for British, +2 for tanks, +2 for aircraft. So it's +5 to +5. He's just looking to flip me here, I think. And he rolled a 2, +5 is a 7. And I rolled a 10. Now, combat results table, this is very important. When he rolled the 7 and I rolled the 10, it became an AS. So that combat just stopped there. And so then he went ahead and attacked from here, and he's going to start off only at +2. +1. That's because there's a river and a city. So his German and armor would be 2 + 2 is 4, and then -2 because it's going across the river. Combat commitment should be fairly obvious. Yes, we just did our thing. I threw the tanks and that aircraft again because that way, if I'd have thrown the other aircraft, the fighter command, it'd have been -3 to -3. If he rolls a 6 and I roll, you know, a 4 or less, I would take 2 sorties on the fighter command, and I said, let's just use the guy that I can't take more than 1 sortie anyway. And that's why we didn't bother to roll. So he became a 4, and I became a 5. 2 for the airplane, 2 for the tanks, 1 for the British. And he rolled a 4 plus 4, which was an 8. And I rolled a 3 plus 5, which was an 8. So British held their ground in Lille. And then he attacked again. This time I threw in fighter command to be +2 to +3. He rolled a 5, and I rolled a 3 plus 3 is a 6. And that ended his attacks because it's 4 movement points to attack each time across. River in a city. It's +3, +1 for the unit. And at this point, he said, I quit. He said, I can't defeat France. I said, yes, you can. You still have a surprise attack marker and an airdrop. You just didn't use them this turn. And you have 3 fair weather turns, guaranteed, July, August, and September. I said, it's not over yet. Now, I'll admit, if he can't get any farther than where he's at right now, through 3 fair weather turns and a surprise attack marker and an airdrop, then I'd agree it would be over for Germany. But I don't think it's over quite yet. So then he was... Okay, now we're into Western Allies. Oh. I was showing him that that's one of the things he could have... What do we do here? I was showing him that if he had gone ahead and taken the Panzer out, if he had taken out Sedan, that he would have been able to, move the infantry over for supply. The 2nd Panzer could have popped out in Lille, and he could have had a little better position if he'd taken Sedan first. But, and then, since he has no fighter cover, it was like, just put down 2 bombed markers. And now the French move from Oran to Gabes. And then they pick up the guy in Gabes, drop him in Marseille, and the convoy ends its turn in Oran again. And then it gets picked up, and everybody moves up to Bordeaux. And then I finished my turn in Gibraltar. And what else did I do here? Oh, I moved this infantry that was in 3117. He just goes 1, 2, 3, 4 up the rail line. It ends there, and then the guy that was sitting on the Italian border, since he only has 1 pro marker in the cup. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and ends there. And then I moved him back into Lille and just said, let's see if this holds up in June. I got the first RAF out of Antwerp, and I also moved Fighter Command back to London. I was getting tired of having to spend so many sorties to try and supply these guys, and they covered the British from London in that Hex 27 11. They cover all the British forces. So, and of course the French are in supply. And then I ran the Americans up by 2. And the British up by 2. Oh, and the British up by 1. in Nance. And then we went over to the Soviets, and I don't think I did a thing. I moved something somewhere. Oh, moved a guy up to the north. So it's like, no biggie. We're in the no supply phase, and there's none of that. The Axis replaced their airplanes. And used up all his points. Western allies are going to be doing something similar here. French spent 6 there. And then also took down their convoy. And we had the British come up here and start doing their stuff. Did 3 airplanes. 3209 is the convoy in Nance. I brought it down by 2. And the Med Fleet still had 3 left, and I went and fixed the convoy in the Middle East while I still could. And Soviets didn't have any replacements, no upgrades, mobilization. Nobody had anything that they could build. We went into the diplomacy phase. The Axis doesn't have any points. The West, if you look at the Diplomacy Cup, it's got a whole bunch of 6 no events, a pro and a political failure, pro Axis and a political failure. I really didn't want the West to possibly pull a political failure because, I don't want Italy joining the war. So I skipped the West, and the Soviets went, spend 5 and let's pull, and I got a political failure. So that let him put pro marker up here in Finland. So between a conquest and a political failure on my part, Finland went from being pro-Soviet to now being pro-German. So 1 more success from him and he can activate Finland, although I think he's really wanting to bring in Italy. I think that's his goal, conquest of France and activate Italy to keep the Western Allies busy while he deals with Russia. And end of turn phase is just us getting stuff off the card. I get a big stack, he gets a big stack, so. And he gets something that's very important to him. So I get back my tanks. I get a whole bunch of Russian armored units to build next turn. And then he gets a submarine, a heavy artillery, another submarine, and his infantry unit. And then his economic reform goes on the 1 box. So he has an extra factory now. And then this moves off to December. There we go. And we're in June. Let's go to the weather phase. And he rolled a 652, which is not good for him. Because on the poor side, you go to the June poor line for June in the cold zone, and he rolled a 6 for that. So that's going to stay poor. And then the fair line, he rolled a 5, which gives him poor in the mild zone, and it stayed fair in the warm zone. So not a good weather die roll for him this turn. So go, no one declared war. Economies, should just see us bouncing through. And now he's up to 14 minus 2 is 12, plus 1 for the economic reform gives him 26, 13 factories. 24, and this turn I thought about giving the French 2, and I was like, I think they're going to be able to get by with just 1 from the US. I counted, and I did a quick count in my head, and I thought I'm going to need points for the Brits to replenish things and or move things. Let's see, where are we at? Strategic warfare. So he's still at 0. I'm at plus 4 this time because I have 2 bombed markers in Germany. I just put them out in the North Sea. And he moved his submarines somewhere. Yeah, out here to the sea zone. So I'm going to be halved. And he rolls a 6. And a 5 plus 4 is a 9. Rounds down to 4, and it goes down to 4.5, rounds up to a 5. A 6 to a 5. At least I didn't lose a factory, but now Germany's at maximum production. So next turn he'll have 13 plus 1, 14. He'll have 28 points going into July. And then his submarines came back in 3 turns, so they'll be back in time to be used relatively soon. And he still has 1 on his card. So now we're into strategic move, and I don't think he had one. Just put it on his card. And in the west, I took the guy that I had put in Marseille last turn, and I moved him up here across from the Marne, trying to give me some defenses along the rivers. And then the Soviets, their next grand air strategic move to put him up to in the swamps in the north here, so that he can cover sort of the northern section for air support. And we went to Axis operations. He didn't do a lot here. I mean, he did the obvious one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Placing those. And then I pointed out to him at this point that he could make sure that the French air couldn't help. Because right now I'm plus 2. A tank would make it plus 3. An airplane would make it plus 4. If you count his, he's at 3 for a tank. Plus 2 for a tank buddy is 5. Plus 1 for an infantry is 6. You could throw the tanks marker to make it plus 7. Plus 8 for a airplane, which would take him down to plus 6. To my plus 3. Does he want to fight a plus 3 or a plus 4? So he agreed with me. He said, you're right. I should just get rid of those 2 airplanes. I think we officially are going to combat commitment here. Oh, no, we're setting it. So he started off at 6 and then minus 2, so he's at 4. And I was at 2. We both committed. I threw a tanks and he threw an airplane. I don't remember which one. He threw an airplane in. Then I pointed out he could throw his tanks marker in too, so he did. And that gave him a net of plus 6. It's 3 for the primary armor, 2 for a buddy is 5. An infantry is 6. Tank makes it 7. The airplane makes it 8, and then minus 1 for the weather, minus 1 for the city. And he rolled a 6. 6 plus 6 is 12. And I rolled a 4. So I am DD'd and retreated. And then we talked about this a bit, and he was like, you know, you're right. I don't think I want to... He's not going to take it with one of the guys that assaulted. Instead, he moves the 2nd Panzer, which goes 1, 2, 3. And then he can assault the flipped over guy. Going to combat commitment here. Set the counters. Starting off at +3 to 0 because normally it'd be +4, but -1 for the weather. Both committed. He throws another airplane. I throw my last tanks. So it's +4 to +1. He rolled an 8. And it was a good thing I threw the tanks because if I had not thrown it, I would have been DD'd and eliminated. So a 4 on an 8 lets me retreat. And then he takes it. Goes ahead and moves an infantry in to make sure he's in supply. I think he went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to attack into Antwerp. And then he moved this guy up. 6, 8, 10, 11, 12. Are we doing combat commitment? Yes, we're doing combat commitment. This was like a no-brainer again. He's going to throw in an airplane. I'm going to throw in an airplane. I guess we're starting it off here. He's 3 plus 1 is 4. 5, 6. And he threw in his heavy artillery, 7, 8. 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 2, and I was +1 for British, +1 for tank and a. There we are, tank and an airplane. I used one of the airplanes in England. He rolled a 4 plus 5 is a 9. I only managed to roll a 2, and +3 that's a 5, so I was forced to retreat. So he retreated, and the fleets went over here. Took it with his armored unit. And he rolled the attack die instead of the blue die, so that 2 is not +5, it's just the 2 for his artillery, coming back in 2 turns. And then I think he just motored off somebody over here. Kind of pulled a couple guys up onto rail lines. And then he was done. I went into Western Ops. I thought about trying to flip this Panzer unit, and it would have been, at best, 2 for the French tank, 3, 4, -1. It would have been +3 to +4. And that just seemed like a real waste. So instead, I just had the 2nd RAF here. We both were at 5, so... Or I was at 4 and he was at 5. So he could have... -3 to -3. So technically he could have rolled a 6 there and taken me out. Anyway, that means Bomber Command comes back, drops a couple more bombed markers for next turn. 3rd North Africa. Ah yes, the guy that I put in Bordeaux goes marching across to get into the mountains outside between Vichy and Lyon. Here comes the convoy, traipsing across the Mediterranean to end its turn in Alexandria. And then it comes flying back up into Marseille and ends its turn in Corsica. So I can get these garrisons in here, if nothing else, as speed bumps once he breaks through, was my idea. Then I move the armored unit behind here to guard any breakthrough towards Dijon. Trying to figure out where the best place was to go with. I thought about moving the first guards up here and setting them up to retreat into Calais and moving the Calais infantry down. And then in the end, I just said, nah, we'll just try and... He gets fair weather next turn, no matter what. The first guards is most likely dead. Second guards will probably be pinned and taken out of Lille, and then he'll have the BEF is isolated. But if he attacks them, in an isolation situation or whatever, they still have their evacuation marker, so he can't get a DE. He can get a DD, but that means I can, just retreat to Cherbourg or Le Havre, and it won't matter. And then I took up the British convoys, 1, 2, and the American convoy's been up by 1. So we're at the no supply phase, replacements. He just does his airplanes. And then I did 9. Oh no, this is the French. Did 2 there. Did both their airplanes. And fighter unit. 5 sorties. Oh, and then this is me just bringing back my airplanes. For the Brits, got Force H out, and then I think I still had 6 left. Yeah, I had 6 left, so I went and I did convoy in Nantes and the convoy in Calais. And Soviets didn't have any replacements. Upgrades, there are none. Mobilization, he doesn't have any points to build anything. He had a guy to build, but he didn't save any points for it. He was like, it's not really going to make that much of a difference. The West doesn't have anything to build. Oops, wrong button. And then we went into the Soviets, and of course the Soviets spend 6 and are going to bring out their tanks here. They put 1 in Kursk, 1 in Beladuki, and the other one in Smolensk. I have another one coming real soon, and I figured I'd put him in Bryansk or Rostov. I'm not sure where. I might have to move the guy out of Rostov to let me put a tank down there. And so we go to diplomacy phase. The Axis didn't have any points. And let's see, we have the political failure isn't there. So it's a 1 in 7 shot that I'll pull his pro marker. And I didn't. I pulled a no event. And then the Soviets spent 5 and just said, okay, political failure back in, no event back in. So it's 6 no events and 1 pro marker and 1 political failure, I think. And we pulled everything out to make sure. And yes, that is the mix. So I think... Oops, not that. Yes, we've got August. Now we go to the end of turn phase, so there's faction track. So we're getting back our stuff. Got my French, got my British. I got an Ultra, and then another tank army for me to build next turn. And then my first... Oh, the British also got an armored unit that they can build, the first Canadians. And then the Russians picked up a factory, so they... their national tracks, they're up to 3 Lend-Lease now. So they will have a grand total of 18 next turn. They're only getting 1 per factory because they're in the Moscow Treaties in effect. And then we're ready to go into July. And he was talking about just conceding because he didn't think he could conquer France. And I cajoled him to at least play out these 3 fair weather turns because he still has a surprise attack marker, still has this paratrooper. I think he's going to be able to do a number on me here as far as... the second RAF shouldn't be at 3, it should be at 4. No. That's right, I used the guy in England. And that was the end of this turn. So, I mean, the Germans are not doing all that well. They have broken through Sedan and pushed around the corner here. I think those 2 Russian Guards units are probably pretty much dead. The BEF is probably evacuated to Le Havre. And then it's just a matter if he can get some other kind of push, you know, onto Calais or something. He's got to take the Paris... He basically has to break the Somme up through Calais to be able to supply himself forever. Or he's got to take this corner city here, which I've pointed out in one of my tactical videos. This hex and this hex are the 2 most important for the combat in France, because those are the corners where the Germans can just supply from wherever by following the rail lines through France. Without that, they have to stay basically within about like 2 hexes of Lille or whatever when they break through, assuming that they take Lille, to keep himself in supply. So, you know, my goal is to deny him these 2 hexes if at all possible. His goal is to get, like, Calais, break the Somme, push me out of Paris, and then he can, as he pushes down, he can push now across the Marne, then even past the Seine, and still be able to supply himself through that rail line. So that's his goal, is to do that, and my goal is to stop him, which, even with improved French, you know, Guards infantry units, it's going to be very hard, especially since the BF couldn't hang on in Antwerp. I would have rather have moved of my own free accord, and then I could have done something about the line or whatever. But that was not to be. Anyway, there you have it. That's May and June of 1942. Case Yellow has begun. I'm Jun608. If you like my videos, please subscribe. Hit that like button so YouTube algorithms will keep my stuff up and fresh for everybody to see. And we'll be back with the next episode probably in about a week. And until then, stay safe and bye-bye.